All right, this is a very strong mystery term, and I want to dedicate the next few months to breaking the mystery of this. All right, because we got to understand this. I had somebody ask me and say, "Oh, Minister EnQi, the plasma that's in your body, is that like the plasma that's in the cosmos, like in the universe?" I said, "Yes, but not in the way that you think." And so she said, "What you mean by that?" I said, "The way you just asked me that question, you think that because of the plasma in the cosmos, they named the plasma in your body after it. That's incorrect. They studied the plasma in your body, and when they finally found out that the universe wasn't empty and that it's plasma everywhere, it functions in the exact same way. So when you look at the universe is different densities of plasma that transform one into another, into another, into another. All right, so you have the traditional stages of matter. And I say traditional because they just added on the fourth, which is plasma. But you have liquid and then gas. Right? These are the three traditional states of matter. The fourth one is plasma. Now, here's the thing about this. There's a difference between liquid and fluid. So sometimes we miss that part. Like for instance, the air, the atmosphere that we live in is considered a fluid. That's how aerodynamics is to say that the planes fly through the air on the same basic principles as fish move through the ocean. All right, so it's the same thing. The water is actually plasma, and that's why it doesn't subscribe to any of the laws of liquid. So water is technically not a liquid because all of the physical laws that govern liquids, water doesn't apply to. All right, the basic one, any liquid, when it becomes solid, it's heavier than it is when it's a liquid. Right, so if I freeze milk, it'll sink in a glass of milk. But if you freeze water, it floats in a cup of water. It becomes lighter. All right, and the reason being is because water is composed of what?
Gas.
It's just two gases, hydrogen and oxygen. All right, so but when you ionize gas, or when you add, sometimes they make these terms to make things sound more difficult. So when I say ionize and deionize, it sounds scientific, but really all you're doing is adding electricity. If I add some electrons to a gas, it becomes ionized, it becomes plasma, right? If I take away some electrons, it becomes deionized and it goes downward through the more dense forms of matter. All right, so when we look at our body, that's what we constantly, that's what our focus should be on a regular basis. So over the past 15 years, we've heard the benefits to negative ions, right? Because what we're trying to do at the root is ionize the body, add negative ions to the body. So, all right, so our blood consists of about what? What percentage of our blood?
Mainly plasma.
Right. About what percent?
Yeah, you got me.
All right.
I say 80 to 90.
No. About what percent of our blood is actually blood cells? Because that's what we typically think of.
It's all
About 15%. And somewhere around 60% is your plasma, which is the important thing to talk about. Because we're going to see that the plasma is actually where your consciousness and what makes you, is actually resides at. It's in the plasma.
You figure, this question.
And there's actually very little water in your body. What we have attributed to being water in the various areas of the body is actually plasma, not water. Yeah, so the plasma is just the fluid minus the blood, and if you get a transfusion of plasma, your body can reproduce the blood cells because the plasma is the most important thing in the body. So like for instance, there's a lot of talk right now in the conscious community about the validity of the Bible. And then the overtones to that is the validity of whether there's a God, right? Because people often confuse one with two. The same thing as people confusing the Bible or the Quran with religion. So when I tell people that they need to go back to studying the Quran, go back to studying the Bible, they're like, oh yeah, but I'm not trying to get into religion. You're always trying to put somebody in religion because you're a minister. I'm like, hold on. First of all, I didn't tell you to go to church or the mosque or the synagogue or the temple. I just said you need to be somewhere besides the corner. You know what I'm saying? Then, it's science in those books that outside of those books is unmatched still yet. It's stuff in those books that scientists just discovering the last 50 years have been in those books. Depending on, it don't even matter who you listen to in terms of who wrote the book, because you tell, okay, if you deal with what's in the book or the religious aspect, it's like, okay, Muhammad was in the cave and he got the book divinely inspired by the angel Gabriel, blah blah blah. So some people's like, well, that's not true, and you know, this person really wrote it, and all right, cool, whoever wrote it, it was 1,500 years ago minimum by anybody's standard. 1,500 years ago. So 1,500 years ago, they knew things that's in the Quran that scientists are just getting the last 50 to 100 years. 2,000 years ago, it's stuff in the Bible that they're just getting right now. So, and then the deeper I study, I see that there's a level of intelligence that's at play that nobody can really put their finger on. For instance, when you look at a cell, right, nobody consciously directs that one fertilized cell from your father's sperm and your mother's egg into how to build itself. Like for instance, like if we take 1,000 bricks and we throw those bricks in the middle of the street and step back, those bricks will not build themselves into a building, let alone build themselves into a building that can keep rebuilding itself as the building starts to degenerate. So it's something in each one of those cells that has that intelligence that already knows what to do. All right, come on. We're going to make a lung. Okay, y'all going to make a liver. Boom, 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 boom.
And that was my next question. What is that called? It's called intelligence.
That intelligence comes through the body's plasma. Bible and get a lot of stuff. That's where I get a lot of stuff from. But I have to take it outside of that book into different encyclopedias and scientific books and medical books. I got a stack of just medical books they use in medical school. Then once I get the stuff from there, then I got to take it to the experimental to see how it works in people now. Because it's one thing to get it from a book and then it's hypothetical, it's theory, it's theoretical. Now we got to apply it to people and see if this is going to work. So the plasma is the most important part of the blood, and it's often overlooked. So that's why I want to start to spend more time and dig a little bit more in the plasma, because we're not going to really understand anything about how our body works until we get this plasma thing down pat. All right, that's the key to the whole body. When you look anywhere in the body, the plasma is what supplies the intelligence and lets the body know what to do, where things are supposed to go, how things are supposed to function. Now, most people say, well, I thought we had hormones for that. Correct. However, hormones wouldn't even make it from point A to point B if it wasn't for plasma taking them there. Because once your endocrine glands or any of the glands that secrete a hormone secrete it secretes it into plasma, and the plasma has to say, okay, come on, let's go over here. This is where you belong. Okay, boom. Like how Hakeem functions. Hakeem puts people together. Oh, you got the herbs? Oh, okay, you need the audience? Okay, I'll bring y'all together. That's what plasma does for hormones. Okay. So it takes the hormones from point A to point B. You have a cascade of hormones that have to be produced in the plasma. So a lot of times when your body is checked to see if you have adequate levels of certain hormones, like vitamin D for instance, they check your blood plasma levels. That's the test that they'll run. So if you want to see if you got the right amount of vitamin D in your body, they'll check to see if you got X amount of nanograms per milliliter, depending on whether you're white, black, male, female, of vitamin D floating around in your plasma. So that's the key to understanding the body is the plasma. So this is the key to understanding how the body works. All right, even in the heart, you got the pericardium, which is the bag that is over the heart. All right, the pericardium is full of plasma, and a lot of times when we deal with problems with plasma, they cover it up with a lot of different names. One being inflammation. Inflammation. This right here is the beginning of the end for a lot of us, because acute inflammation turns to chronic inflammation because we don't take it as a warning sign and change our habits. All right? So a lot of times inflammation is loss of plasma or the changing of what makes up your plasma. So they'll hide the inflammation and call it blood viscosity. Right? And blood viscosity, they'll tell you, is a measure of the things that's floating around in your blood. One of the things, I mean, they just, every time you look at them, they always up to something. They always up to something. So, the new thing, which is an old thing, but one of the things that they're talking about now is, go ahead, Jay, what the white guy said?
In regards to the protein?
Right, in regards to the protein.
No, it's specific. He said,
It was a specific type of protein, though.
specific type of protein.
Uh-huh.
Globular protein.
Correct. Globular protein. What does globular mean?
A combination of cells, of proteins together.
No. Globular is simply just the shape, the molecular structure of the cell. I mean, of whatever it is. So because it's round, it's a spheric, it comes under the title of globular proteins.
Right.
But there's a bunch of different globular proteins, and they're not all bad for you.
No, they're not.
The only ones that are in the blood or the plasma that cause problems are the ones that come from white blood cells. And the specific name for them is immunoglobulins, I believe. Globulins.
Yeah,
Immunoglobulins cause a ton of problems in your body. Here's what the white blood cells do. And it's almost like how you gotta look at a relationship. And you get with a sister and she move into your house, right? That's what we're talking about. You're the homeowner. It's your apartment, right? So you're with somebody, you want them to move in. You want to look at, because nobody's perfect, right? Everybody got their ups and downs. So what you're looking at is what they contribute that's beneficial versus the headaches they cause. Same thing with white blood cells. What white blood cells do, being that they are cannibals by nature, is that they eat anything that's floating around in your body that does not maintain a high level of charge.
anything foreign.
Not just foreign, anything that loses its charge. Because even when parts of your body lose a charge, the white blood cells eat that. That's where you get autoimmune diseases from. Okay, so if you're losing the charge all throughout your body, you will have lupus, because the white blood cells will just be running all over, eating everything. All right, if you have type 1 diabetes, the white blood cells are able to get into the pancreas and eat the beta cells that are in there because they have lost their charge. If you have, I mean, there's a ton I can think of. Hashimoto's autoimmune disease, that's where the white blood cells are now eating the thyroid gland, the parathyroid gland. What is it? Paranocturnal oxaluria or something like that. That's where the white blood cells have actually started to eat the red blood cells. So it's like a whole host. Like there's no limit to what the white blood cells will eat. Anything that doesn't have a charge, they'll eat.
What would stop them from eating everything?
Well, when your body is properly electrified and you have a high charge, there's nothing that they can eat. Just more copper. You do need more copper though. Copper's important and copper's overlooked because people talk about the high amount of nitrogen in our atmosphere and the high amount of nitrogen pumped in our food, whether you're eating meat, fish, chicken, whatever. Anytime you break down a protein, you release nitrogen into your body. All right, because that's what makes up a protein. So I'll put that right here, just so we get it. O stands for oxygen. When you add oxygen or hydrogen to oxygen, you have water. We put it like that, right? When you add carbon to hydrogen and oxygen, you have a carbohydrate. Now, the moment you add nitrogen to carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen, you have a protein, or an amino acid, I should say, but I'm gonna write down protein because it takes up less space. All right, protein is a bunch of amino acids. All right, that's a group of amino acids. All right, so once you start to break down a protein and you break this down, you're releasing this nitrogen throughout the body. All right, so one of the things that the liver does is the liver grabs that nitrogen, converts it into urea, sends it to the kidney, out the bladder as urine. All right, and it can do that all day, every day without blinking an eye. Problem is when we overwhelm the body with too much nitrogen, then you start to have things go wrong in the body. You start to have seizures, which is glutamate built up on the brain. Glutamate is another word for nitrogen or ammonia. Because anytime you add nitrogen to hydrogen, you have ammonia. So that's a big problem in our body. So when you have a lot of glutamate on the brain, you can have seizures, epileptic fits, etc. When you have, when the kidney gets overwhelmed with ammonia or uric acid, it can slip out of the kidney back into circulation and crystallize, and you start getting uric acid crystals built up. That'll give you arthritis and gout because the little crystals are large in the joints and stuff. A lot of times we pay no attention to how we mix chemicals and how that winds up in our body, because we don't really pay attention to the chemicals in the food. But we do produce poisonous chemicals secondarily in the body from ingesting poisonous toxins separately, and then the way we eat, we mix up the food. So we might have some toxins in the greens, some toxins in the chicken, and then drink some soda with a little formaldehyde mixed up and put that all in there, and you know, it get crazy from there.
So that's like what food poisoning is. Like, say if you just might have ate a lot of stuff, like
You can get food poisoning like that, bacteria, virus, germs, etc. All right. So this I just wanted to put down as supplemental so we'll see what's going on with the white blood cells in the various areas of the body. So there's a lot of different things that the white blood cells do to understand that relationship thing. Just take it back there. That are detrimental to the body, that far outweigh its eating up bacterias and viruses and things like that that come into the body. So that's what they're talking about when they stress the role of the white blood cells in terms of your immune system, is that so small bacteria and viruses and things like that that come into the body, the white blood cells will eat them. However, we know if the white blood cells were efficient at doing that, then we wouldn't have a whole bunch of problems that we deal with in the first place. Like you wouldn't have a cold, because a cold is a foreign strain of RNA or DNA that comes into the body and starts to give you an infection. Where the white blood cells at when that happens? They somewhere else. They don't want no. In fact, usually that's how viruses move around through your body. White blood cells actually carry them throughout the body. So a virus can go in your body and catch a white blood cell like a cab. Unless you have a break somewhere, bacteria can't really get in. That's why most infections come in through the respiratory system. To get rid of viruses, you just want to limit their ability to colonize your body. So it's not necessarily a matter of catching one. We have viruses and bacteria that live in and on us that we're never going to get out of that. The earth is like a little bacteria. We swimming in bacteria. The name of the game is to get the body's natural immune system, which is electricity, the bioelectricity that functions in your body, so high that the virus and the bacteria can't reproduce and colonize. So very simple. Bacteria and virus cannot survive in oxygen. Oxygen. All right? And there's a reason for that. Right? But see, here's where racism plays a role in how our medicine and health is taught to us. Without high levels of eumelanin, you're limited from your interaction with electricity. Limited, all right? In your interaction with electricity. So,
Can you repeat that?
without high levels of eumelanin, your body is limited in its interaction with electricity. So, instead of saying, because we've heard this, most of us, if we're paying attention, bacteria and virus can't survive in an oxygen-rich environment, et cetera, but that's a little racist. But we don't catch it because we don't know the biology like that of black folks. What they should be saying, which is even though when you get more oxygen in, you get more electricity in, but there's more things that goes along with that, because then you want to know how to store more electricity, what transforms different types of electricity, how everything works. So eventually you'll come back around to this this term right here, which is the mystery term.
Right off the Broadnary sub-stop, Philadelphia, PA. Shot so loud you would think it was a club spot. African Americans, although we all over the web, we the hood librarians. We ship to prisons too. We reach out and deliver to those that's bitten too, but it's more than a bookstore. You wonder we got it, mixtapes, DVDs, and culture products. BlackandNobel got our hands in a lot of projects. We welcome all to come build, the energy is positive. And remember, other team is awake and conscious. Come through and experience this place of knowledge. They say they'll put it in a book if they wanna hide it from us, but we got them books so you can buy it from us. Something to read while you on a train or riding the bus. Get your read on, food for thought, get your eat on. BlackandNobel, I buy my books at Black